So first, we're just going to do some. I'll say my name and pronouns. If anybody in the chat wants to, say theirs as well, that's very cool. And also an idea for what you might be writing about, like a cause or issue. You may say that as well. So I'm Joey Swanson. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm a junior. Not that that's terribly important, but I'm interested in writing about anti-Semitism and Indigenous peoples. So.
Yeah, and I'm Sophia Corso, and Joey and I are both representatives from Students Demand Action, and I'm also from Lakeridge's Equity Council. So my pronouns are she, her, and I'm also a junior. So we're really excited to be here doing this training today.
Okay, so what are op-eds and LTEs? So letter to the editors are generally shorter. They're about 150 to 250 word letters written to a media outlet as a response to an article, event, communal issue, or editorial. And then for op-eds, they share an opinion with backing evidence and reasoning to persuade lawmakers and constituents, usually longer than LTEs, and they can be proactive or reactive as long as the issue has public relevance.
Okay, so the first thing we're going to be talking about is how to write an LTE, or letter to the editor. So before we get started, if you're a student watching this, I just want to acknowledge that a lot of this may seem like a review from your English class, but we're going to lay the groundwork before getting into the specifics of writing these. So even if it seems like review, there are some key differences to like organizing and writing letters to the editors or op-eds rather than just a typical paper. But the first thing you want to do is establish context and urgency in the first sentence. So it should clearly state what you're responding to. And if it's a letter to the editor, odds are you're writing in a response to a specific article or an event from the media outlet. So explain why it's an important issue using strong and powerful language, and you should let your readers know why they should care about this topic and why you care. And then second, you want to make a clear argument and take a defendable stance. And to do so in the first 3 sentences is best so that your reader doesn't lose interest. And then third, support your claim. So you don't want to have too much space in an LTE to use a lot of evidence, but briefly present facts, statistics, and other evidence to back up your claim. You want to make sure you don't bore or water down in your language, and also, of course, make sure your information is valid and are using a reliable source. So, for example, if your letter involves the issue of gun violence, you could use data from Everytown or gun violence by the numbers, a page on Everytown. You just want to make sure you know the organization you're pulling information from, and you just want to know what the organization is and know where they're getting their information as well, and that you trust it. Okay, and then moving on. So also, fourth, you want to wrap up your claim with a conclusion. And I'm sure you've all heard about how to write those in English a million times, but it's just important to summarize your main idea and present your final argument. And then 5, this is the most important and the most unique to writing letter to the editors, is the call to action. So this is super important for you to wrap up your letter with some kind of action for people to take. And you want to make sure this action is very specific and you leave people with a feasible ask, providing them options and telling them exactly what they can do to make a difference. So examples of call to actions might look like urging people to join a specific local organization or group, to call congressional representatives, to vote for a specific candidate, to have important conversations with fellow community members, etc. You just want to make sure it provides them with a clear path to action.
Okay, so for writing an op-ed, it's similar, but it's a little further developed. You want to, for the lead, you want to capture the reader's attention with a relevant hook. The lead should be timely, bold, and undisputable. So some hook ideas would be use the news, tell a dramatic anecdote, use humor if appropriate, reference popular culture, turn conventional wisdom on end, etc. We have a whole list of examples as well. So. Next up, the op-ed is a little bit more developed than a letter to the editor, as I've said, and it can be proactive rather than reactive. So you might be introducing a new idea to the media outlet. So that's why having a strong thesis is very important. They can be explicit, like a specific roadmap, or just a sort of implied broader thesis. And this is where it kind of differs from the letter to the editor, because an op-ed has a lot of length, so you can fully develop your argument and reasoning and evidence. And then 3, you want to support your argument with quotes, statistics, news, and research. And then the body of the op-eds usually follow a typical paragraph structure that you see in an English class, of having a key point of a topic sentence, and then evidence, and then reasoning and analysis, and then analysis. So you can do 3 body paragraphs, but it is flexible. And then 4, the next part is to include a counterclaim. So I'm sure you've all heard about this. It could be its own paragraph or just kind of woven in throughout the letter. But you want to preempt critics by acknowledging potential flaws with your argument and then dismissing possible counterclaims. But since this is going to be the public, going out to the public, it's important to to show empathy and respect. And then finally, number 5, there should be an inclusion of a specific call to action.
Okay, so submitting your letters, this is a really important step. So one of the most important parts to prepare for ahead of time is how to submit your letters, because you want to make sure if you spend a lot of time writing these important works that they get published. So it's important to know what a media outlet is looking for, and how the steps you need to take to get it published with them. So you want to write your letter in adherence to the media outlet's guidelines. So most outlets have a maximum length stated online, and if you can't find the requirements for the letter to the editor, or op-eds, you can just call or look online or ask them. But submitting your letter to your newspaper or media outlet of choice online often uses an online submission form. So you can usually submit your local newspaper or media outlet using online submission forms, but sometimes you have to email them in. But again, this information should always be available on the website of whatever outlet you're trying to submit to. And then it is important to include your personal information, but we want to clarify this information is never printed. They just need to know how to contact you and where this writing is coming from. And it's also always important when you're responding, especially to specific events, to write these quickly and submit them within a week of the actual event so that you can respond in a time frame where it still has public relevance and people care. And also, if you respond timely, your publication is more likely to get published. So afterwards, of course, whether or not your publication is chosen or your work is posted, you want to follow up with a thank you.
Okay, so let's go into some letter examples. So really quickly, this is just a labeled op-ed from the New York Times. We're not going to go through the whole thing, of course. This is just something we're going to briefly examine. We're not going to read or anything, but it's just so you can kind of see the visual of the length and how these letters are broken up. So just waiting for this to load. Hope it will load. That would be embarrassing if not. Okay, great. Almost there. Edge of my seat, so excited. All right, great. So as you can see, it has a lead and a hook pulling from a specific news, from the news specific scene in an article, and the to be sure is the counterclaim. Oh, let me go down to it. Okay, so they write, instead of waiting around for human nature to change, let's start to rein in bad behavior by promoting accountability. Instead of just ending it right there, it continues to mention content providers, specifically talking about who the author says they want to make the change. They tell the content providers to stop allowing anonymous comments, moderate your comments in forums, etc. You get the idea. And I just want to point out how this is a good example of the call to action, because it says who they want the change maker to be with specific and multiple steps about how they can make the change. So that just goes to show how call to action is really important, because that's what's actually going to create a difference and get the results that you are hoping for. Oh, shoot.
And these are some more fantastic examples from Oregon Student Voice. We're not going to go through these examples, but in our letter writing training, we just wanted to have these linked for people to look back to if you need more examples. Most of these are opinion editorials, but they're really great resources if you're writing yours and you want another example of how to structure it or what type of information you should be including, even if these are on a different topic. And then moving on, we have some general letter writing tips and tricks. So while email pitching or writing, you want to ask yourself these 3 questions: why now, so what, and why me? Just to make sure you're really honing in on a topic and writing something that's meaningful and important. And to submit to one paper or media outlet at a time is really important because most will not publish your submission if it's submitted to multiple sources. And then if published, it's really important to keep that relationship with the media source, and you want to thank the editor for giving space to the ideas and issues rather than showcasing you, because it's not about you as the author, it's about the issues you're presenting. And also it's important to track the news and jump at opportunities. You want to stay informed because a large part of writing this type of work is responding to issues preemptively and issues that have public relevance. So you want to know what's going on in your news and in your community, and then respond with your writing, respond to that. And it's also important to have a strong voice. Columns are mainly formal, yet conversational in tone. So just keep that in mind while you're writing, and keep your opinion consistent. And also reread, edit, and revise. So just like writing for school that you really care about, this is work that you're putting out there and putting out to the community. So it's really important that you're putting your best writing forward and you're taking a lot of time on your work.
Now it's time to start writing. Now that we've gone over what they are and how to use them, it's time to start creating some LTEs and op-eds. This is the first of Lake Oswego's Respond to Racism support hours. We're so grateful that this awesome opportunity to share this information and encourage you to get involved through utilizing everything that we have talked about before. Yeah.
And we also really quickly just wanted to put in a disclaimer here, going back to the tips and tricks, and point out why the why me question is really important. So we have gone through this whole training, how to write these articles and how to write these types of letters, but it is really important to ask yourself and reflect on why the subject should be in your voice. For example, let's say you're not part of an identity you're writing about. Maybe you're not the most educated person on the subject, or maybe it's not personal to you. That might be a time to step back and let someone else be the one to address that issue, because it's totally great to realize when it might be better to amplify someone else's voice rather than introduce your own into a conversation. So we just want to say, when you're choosing what subjects to write on and when you're choosing what information to share, just be mindful of that.
Okay, thank you all for coming. Feel free to reach out to either the Students Demand Action Instagram anytime, or sorry, the Respond to Racism Instagram account anytime for more guidance, and feel free to follow. If you ever want to get involved with any of these programs, feel free to reach out to anyone running this event, so myself or Sophia on Instagram. But yeah, thank you so much.